Folks, welcome back to another episode of The Fallen Badge. Today we're going to look at the murder of Officer Eric Zapata, Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, Michigan. Officer Zapata was 35 years old. He had 10 years with Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. Now, he had a daughter, he had 2 sons. His mama and dad were still alive, sister and a brother, and a fiance. Now, the area where he was murdered, evidently he worked that area a good bit of the time. He seemed to be pretty popular among the citizens in that area. Now, the suspect, he'd had some run-ins with the police. He wasn't just a bad fella up to this point. He definitely made some mistakes. Now, according to his cousin, the day of this shooting, the suspect had gotten a pay raise at his job, and supposedly he was celebrating that night. And he'd been drinking some alcohol. I don't know how much, but definitely enough to lead to some bad decisions. Now, in the past 10 years, he'd gotten a DUI. He'd had a felony charge of malicious destruction of fire and police property. And then he got a felony charge of carrying a concealed weapon. Now, he'd had some contact with Kalamazoo police, but according to the chief now, it wasn't anything too bad. Now, it's April 18th, 2011. Officer Zapata, now he's going to get off at 12 midnight. Now, some 911 calls come in about 18 minutes after 11. And the callers are saying there's shots being fired in the 1400 block of Hayes Park. Now, Officer Zapata is dispatched on that. But now another officer who got the call first, he makes the scene in the block. Now, the officer gets out of his car and he's listening and looking. Well, he sees the suspect. Suspect sitting on the front porch of I believe it's his daddy's house at 1411 Hayes Park. Now, the officer, he asked the suspect, he goes, "Hey, did you hear anybody shooting over here?" Now, instead of just saying, "No, I didn't hear any shots," or "Yeah, I heard some shots, they was down the road," or something, he didn't do any of that. He pulled a pistol he had sitting there nearby, either on his person or close enough he could reach it. And he starts cranking off rounds at this officer. So the officer, he returns the favor and he starts firing back. So now we got a shootout and the call goes out, shots fired, the officer needs help. So now Officer Zapata, I don't know if he was the next officer to make the scene or not, but he got there pretty quick. Now the officer that was involved in the shootout, he's saying, okay, the suspects run back southbound from 1411 Hayes Park. He's running between the houses, somewhere around 1412 or 1416, in between those houses. Now, evidently, Officer Zapata, he pulled up to Hayes Park, from what I gather from the resource material. So now he's following the general path of where the suspect ran. Now, according to this resource material, Officer Zapata, he climbed over the fence or jumped the fence. Looking at the pictures, it looks like there's a 4-foot cyclone fence, and then there's also some privacy fences. In any event, he got over the fence, and as soon as he landed in the alley there, the suspect's standing there. Now, the suspect, he had dropped his pistol, that he'd shot at the other officer with, and he's armed with a rifle. I believe the resource material may have mentioned an SKS, which is I believe it's a Chinese knockoff of the Russian AK-47, but now I'm getting over my head because I'm not a gunman. So all I know is it was a rifle, and so it's throwing out some pretty big rounds. Now the suspect shot Officer Zapata twice, once in the chest and once in the head. And it didn't matter that Officer Zapata was wearing his Kevlar vest, because those rifle rounds would have punched right through it. So Officer Zapata is down. Now the suspect, he takes the rifle and he turns it on himself and he shoots himself there in the alley. So now the suspect's DOA on the scene in the alley. Now the officers get around there and they load Officer Zapata up into a squad car and they run him to the hospital. Unfortunately, it was too late. Officer Zapata was dead. Now the story didn't end right here. Police did a search warrant on the house that the suspect was living at, which I believe it's the daddy's house. Now inside the house they found 11 firearms, and if you count the pistol and the rifle that the suspect had, that's 13. So now the daddy, he gets indicted by a federal grand jury for aiding and abetting felons in possession of firearms and otherwise disposing of those firearms to convicted felons, which the convicted felons were his 2 sons for sure. Now the one son that was still alive, he got indicted and went to court and he pled guilty. He got 48 months. Now, I'm not really for sure why the suspect, other maybe he was drinking, why he'd want to engage in a shootout with the police. There's some that said that they wonder if the suspect wasn't trying to commit suicide by cop. Now, evidently he was going through a nasty child custody situation with his girlfriend over their child, and that he was pretty depressed by that. Still doesn't make any sense. Why in the world would you want to take a human life that's got kids at the house? You're having a bad day or a bad year, you decide you're going to take somebody with you. Now, the last time a Kalamazoo County officer had been shot and killed was in 1867. So they had a pretty good run. There sure wasn't no cause or reason for Officer Zapata to die. Officer Eric Emiliano Zapata. End of watch, April 18th, 2011.